I see myself.
We hear you, Carrie. Mark, we came out at 8:11.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just continue on now?
Yeah, you're Christy, I guess, yeah, you can start up. I mean, you're live, and yes, you can proceed with item 5 rather, excuse me.
Okay, so item 5 is the approval of the voucher. So that's gone around. If everybody could approve the voucher. And I guess I have to wait because we're at public comment until Josh lets me know that is there anybody out?
I checked with Selena this afternoon, and we didn't have anything, but Josh, if anybody's live, go for it. I mean, well, through Christy.
Nope. Nobody's in under attendees right now.
Right. There's nobody waiting, so we can move
Correct.
forward. And if somebody does show up because they were late, we can entertain. And so next I need approval of the minutes from the April 12th board meeting.
Jennifer, so moved.
Second, Jessica.
Is there any discussion? So all in favor, please raise your hand. Voters, please raise your hand. Is there anyone opposed? Jennifer, are you a voter?
No, I'm not.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
All right, so that is unanimous, all hands raised. So we'll move that minutes forward. And then Mark, your superintendent report.
It's a long one this evening, Christy. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I know. I will be brief and succinct, and if you have any questions, please jump in. Want to give a shout out to all of our teachers, all of our staff members, and administration. This past week was Staff Appreciation Week. So much thank you to the community, to the parents, board members, and everybody for just taking care of people and acknowledging the good work of our staff in what has been a very difficult year for our kids, our families, but we're so proud of our teachers and everybody in our schools and thank them for what has been a really hard year. I want to welcome our new board members, Eliza Bishop from Tremont, and Brian Henkel and Jamie Whitehead from Mount Desert. And welcome to those individuals. And I know that the learning curve might be high. They probably have a lot of questions, and we'll look forward to sitting down and working with them. We'll be doing an orientation that'll include Nancy and a bunch of others, but please reach out to us if you have any questions, and welcome. And that also is a quick segue to the fact that I'll be working with Christy to set up workshops. A lot of things come up in terms of processes and things that the board does do. And I think it's important that we bring professional development to our board members, our new ones and our board members that have sustained us over the years. You've probably heard a lot about vaccinations for adults. And you're hearing some information about kids. And my understanding is today the FDA approved the use of the Pfizer vaccine for 12-year-old students and above. So what does that mean? What it means is right now we're going to work with the hospital and any other entity that we can do to provide educational material to the community and allow parents and families to make the choice if they would like to have their children vaccinated. I will say that I'm a very strong proponent of vaccinating. I think it's helped us get to the place that we're at now. And I hope families consider that. So that we look forward to partnering with our health experts and MDI Hospital and others in bringing information forward. And hopefully we'll be able to have some clinics in the near future for our students and through the summer. End of the year events are coming, a lot of culminating activities. You'll be hearing a lot from principals and a lot from school staff. And it feels really good to even be talking about in-person things and how we can celebrate the accomplishments of our kids and our staff and what's been a very difficult year. So I know principals will be updating board members and parents and others. If you have questions, please just reach out to those building principals. Like to acknowledge that even though we are working to, continue to promote more in-person activities and other events, and I couldn't be more prouder of our kids and our staff in terms of following the guidelines, and thank our community for being patient. We still recommend following and still do follow the CDC and MDOE guidelines, which means I know there are a lot of questions about vaccinations. I know there are a lot of questions about masks. But simply put, when we're in a school, when I go to your home or you come to my home, we do what is the right thing. And the right thing for our schools right now is to follow those guidelines. So we continue to recommend wearing masks and following those health and safety protocols, and that'll keep us all safe so we can do those in-person events. If folks do have questions about what the expectations are for travel and masks and so on, please go to our website. Pleased to announce that we have come to a tentative agreement with the Bar Harbor support staff on a contract, and you'll hear more about that. Again, that's a tentative agreement, so that's subject to ratification by both the local school committee as well as the Bar Harbor support staff. As you know, Dr. Meltzer, Julie Meltzer, will be leaving us after 8 years of service. And so you'll see a posting for that position very soon, within the next day or two. After consultation with the board and taking input and feedback, we will be posting that position internally initially. We believe there are qualified candidates within our district to be considered, and we look forward to that process. More on that as we get into that, but the first step will be a posting internally within our district. Beginning the process of vetting candidates for the operations position. We have had applicants for that position, and be putting together a team and vetting those applications, and look to pursue some interviews soon within the next week or so. And then the last thing, or the final thing I'd like to recommend or acknowledge is that with the return of events, outside activities and other events, I really can't say enough thanks to the community in helping us get to where we are, but I would like to recommend for the board's consideration a return to in-person meetings in June. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor the data. I continue to still meet weekly with the task force, meet regularly with our nurses and administration. And so if there are situations that warrant us to hold back or give it a second look, we will certainly do that. We're not making any decisions about health and safety in a vacuum and haven't done so, but I do believe at this time we can move back to in-person meetings with the caveat that we continue to follow the CDC and MDOE guidelines. And with that, I'm pleased to take any questions. Thank you.
Marie,
Maybe, I think Mark probably will know this. Have we updated the AOS parameters for contact tracing to align with CDC based on if you are fully vaccinated 2 weeks post? So I know a lot of our high school students, for instance, are fully vaccinated. And so the CDC is recommending you don't have to quarantine anymore. So have we aligned our AOS decision-making policies to reflect that CDC guideline?
I will double check, Marie. I believe the answer is yes, because the nurses have been right on top of that. But if I misspeak and we need to update them, what you just spoke of is that if we are not aligned, we will be, because we have been from day one. So I'll follow up with that and get back to you. Thank you.
Don't see any other questions. So I don't see Julie either. So do we not have a report from Julie tonight?
I don't know if Julie's still here. What I
Here.
did.
Oh, I see you
Julie
now.
is there.
I'm
There we
sorry, I
go.
see you.
Sorry.
And I didn't
Sorry.
see you.
That was just wishful thinking that you didn't. see
Sorry,
it. No, I
Julie.
only have I have a very, very short report, nothing extensive. You guys have already had a marathon. Just to let you know, I'm really excited that with everybody's help, teachers and community education partners and administrators, we were able to pull off virtual grade level events for grades 4, 6, and 7. And we pulled off an in-person outdoor safety training event at Camp Beechcliff for 5th grade. And we're looking forward to an end of the year 8th grade event that you'll be hearing a little bit more about at the high school. And I'm just really, really excited. It wasn't enough, but it still was really, I think, helpful and well received by the kids. We still have teachers, even though they're exhausted, participating enthusiastically in professional learning, such as nonviolent communication course, the Touchstones training, and a coaching for equity course, which is coming up soon and going to be attended by all of the high school learning area leaders. We will have summer instructional grant applications open tomorrow, and we anticipate that will be probably fewer teachers will be working on those than was last summer. Last summer, everybody had to revamp everything. So we'll see how many teachers, but many have told me about projects that they want to pursue. Just a shout out to all of our community partners. And the Virtual Academy is in its last 5 weeks, like every other school we have in our district. And we're trying to finish the year off really well with about 100 students that we still have in the Virtual Academy K-7. We are waiting for the application forms for the ESSER 3 funds as part of the American Recovery Plan. And we are planning and implementing today. The window opened for NWEA testing for the end of the year. It'll also be our state tests. And we're doing end of the year reading and math and writing assessments, trying to do them in a way that is the least stressful and aligns with the protocols that we all have to follow. That's all I have. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Julie. Does anybody have any questions for Julie? Sorry, they're all exhausted.
I know.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for all your work with that Virtual Academy. It definitely has not gone unnoticed that you took on a huge project this year. Are there any updates from subcommittees? I know we're going to talk about policy and we're going to talk about restructuring a little bit later. So is there anything else?
I have nothing. If you're going to talk about those items, Christy, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Nope. Okay. So now we'll move on to the first reading of revisions to policy. And
So,
Mark.
No, so if I could just open it up. I did allude earlier that I received a phone call and I wanted to, I know that whenever there's a change in our practice or things that might cause people to say, hey, what's going on? But I think in this instance, this particular policy revision it's a coincidence with our change in the agenda. I know there are several board members that come to the policy meetings. And again, I'll just give a shout out. We would love for any teachers, support staff, individuals to come to those meetings at any time. They're open to the public and it's a good group. In this, I also want to back up and say we've been going through a completely comprehensive review of our policies, which is pretty remarkable if you think about that in the face of a pandemic. What we've done, we've had a very active group of people on the policy committee over the several years. I'm really proud of the work that gets done because I think what I'd say is over the past 5 years that there's been huge alignment of our policies. It's been a good body to vet not only policies, but procedures, handbooks, manuals, things of that nature. So they do great work and we meet monthly. In short, this comprehensive review we're undertaking is, policies or good, I believe good policy incorporates feedback from a wide variety of sources, but it's kind of like maintaining your vehicle, your house. It's never done. You continue to look at it, and just when you think it's done, it's time to start over. So this group, we look at things that come up because of changes in statute or law, but we're also looking at things that we've had on the books for a while. And so we have been methodically going through, our attorneys, Drummond and Woodson, gave us some recommendations. They looked at all of our policies, which are unified across the AOS. And we also reached out to Maine School Management to provide some insights. And so you've been seeing that work over the last few months. This particular policy was something that we dove in on, I think at least, I know 2, maybe 3 meetings. And it's public participation at board meetings, not public comment, which is a very similar area, but it's public participation. So in short, there is a revision to this. What I would recommend to the board is normally on a revision, we say, does the board support it? Take a vote. But because we've had a couple of questions, I might recommend that the board just take this tonight as a first reading, and that will give anybody any opportunity to ask any questions, come back in June. And then if the board wants to adopt those recommendations, they can do so in June. One thing I will note is that I think if I look at the current policy and the revisions, those revisions are recommended from Drummond and Woodson. And I would advocate that it actually gives some parameters that are more advantageous. And over the time that I've been here, the board has never not considered public comment from any entity. And what I would say is when the policy committee looked at this recommended revision, there were 2 options, option A and B. Option A was just to only have residents speak, residents of that community. Option B, which is what the policy committee is recommending, actually allows for public comment from any entity, so long as they, state their name and so on and so forth. But it just, I think, highlights or says that the board would like to hear comments from residents first. I'll stop there. That's kind of a long-winded overview, but I wanted to make sure that any questions that we received so far were answered. And Todd or God Almighty, there's a ton of you guys that have been coming to these meetings, policy meetings, Jim and Teresa and others. So anybody that would like to comment on this, please do, or I can take any questions. But again, my recommendation is just to take this as a first reading and then come back in June if the board chooses.
Brian,
So Mark, you differentiated between public participation and public comment, and the title of it refers to public participation, and this is about participation, but it primarily, once you get into the language of it, speaks about public comment.
Yes.
And so I guess maybe having it outline better what the difference is between comment and participation, since the bulk of the text is directed at comment.
Sure.
If there is a differentiation, making that clear in some way, I think would be helpful. What is meant by participation exactly, if not just comment, which is what most of the text talks about?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. And so there are 2 specific pieces, and one, I think many of you have seen it at board meetings. You can see where the chair basically is the facilitator, if you will, of the meeting. And there are oftentimes meetings when we get into situations where, here's the black and white. If it's on the agenda, the only people that really speak are board members, and only the people that the board chair recognizes may speak. That includes the superintendent, administrators, others. And there's been a lot of very, very thoughtful and healthy dialogue at all of our meetings. And I think that it's been managed very, very, very well. But I have been in some situations where, I'll just say this because it's not applicable to MDI. There are some boards that don't entertain any interaction at all with the public beyond what the public comment may be. There's no opportunity to participate in dialogue or presentation. So I think this, Brian, speaks specifically to if we invite students or teachers to comment on something and have an exchange or interaction or dialogue. So it helps define that. The second piece to your question is around public comment. And the board has always been really clear that the parameters around public comment, or if you will, in this policy, they're guidelines. And if you look at the policy, the recommendation, it says, I believe, and I don't have that right in front of me at this second, limited to 30 minutes. I think if you go on to look at that, it says, and the board chair or the board can make an adjustment as necessary. So an example of that might be, we've had some situations that have generated a lot of comment or people that would like to provide feedback, whether they be calendar or other items. And I think that what this policy is trying to do is leave open the door for the board to allow some latitude on navigating both public comment, but define the parameters of public participation. And I don't know if I've drilled down to answer your question or if I've danced around it, Brian, and please feel free to do a follow-up. You're muted, Brian.
I was just
No, I
waiting.
was allowing others to speak.
Oh, okay,
Thanks.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
First of all, this is such a great version and such great changes to what we had before. So thank you for the folks that worked on this. And Mark, you ended on talking about the latitude that this gives for public participation, which we've always done, but it provides a framework. So my question is related to the latitude. We've had a change over the past, since I've been on the board.
Mhm.
There was public comment in one place.
Yep.
At the beginning. And then because with the latitude that the chair was allowed and took forth, we placed 2 comments, public comment periods. And then very recently, and probably not really the best timing, we took off one of those.
Right.
And so my question is, when I read this, I see, even though it doesn't specify it specifically, I see that there is still latitude. I'm asking, I guess, is it true that there is latitude with the chair to be able to put in the agenda a second public comment period? Because I think that's really essential as the board chair's responsibility to read the community and read, and when I say community, I mean staff, parents, everybody, to be able to have the latitude to put a second public comment in. So am I reading it correctly that this provides that latitude? And then I have one more thing to say after that, after you answer that.
I'm going to give you an amazingly uncharacteristic Mark Gauss answer. 100%, yes. The board chair does have that latitude because
Okay,
the board
great.
chair approves an agenda, and the board chair can also do an adjustment to the agenda should the full board approve.
Great, that's fantastic. Thanks everybody for worked on that, because I think that's an important parameter to get in there. And the second one is, and this really doesn't have much to do with the policy itself, but it states it in there about the chair, I think something about directing the superintendent for follow-up research. I think we as a board need to be really, we do a lot better job at the follow-up questioning, since we do not, since the parameters are such and that when you give your comment, it goes to the board chair and there's not a back and forth. When we need to do a sort of a better job at following up, because a lot of times we get a lot of questions during those that we can't answer and we don't engage with, but then those questions are still floating out there, which I think leads to some frustration among the community that we don't do that. So I know that's not something that can be put in policy, but I'd like to see us doing a better job at following up on that.
I don't disagree. Thank you, Marie. Christy, I think you're muted.
Sorry.
Yep.
So I don't see any questions or comments. So we'll move this from discussion item to action item for next month? Is that? It's the first week? Okay.
I think the next item is back to you, Christy.
Yeah, so I put this AOS 91 priorities on here, and I know it's late, it's 30, and so I'm not asking for an in-depth, multiple hour-long discussion. But I sat here at the last meeting that Heather presided over, and as everybody asked questions and discussed things, I wrote down every major topic that you all brought up. And by the end of that meeting, I had an overwhelming list of items that are kind of out there on our agenda, you know, and I'll list a few, you know, just to give you an idea. But, you know, obviously we have a superintendent search where rehiring, you know, for Julie's position. We're in the middle of contract negotiations. Ingrid and the restructuring committee brought forth a proposal for restructure of the AOS, which is a major undertaking that's going to require community forums and votes and discussions. We still have open on our agenda the island-wide middle school. We brought this to a vote for all of our towns. All of our towns unanimously supported moving forward with an island-wide middle school. And so how does that also is a major endeavor. And so how does that balance with the idea of undertaking an AOS restructure? You know, we've talked a lot about, you know, the transportation issues and food services issues. You know, we're undertaking all of these climate initiatives. We're undertaking the anti-racism task force and their initiatives. You know, we're in the middle of calendar. I know we're going to vote on the calendar tonight, but that calendar discussion brought up, you know, prep and planning time and early release and what's the best way as we, you know, to find that time. And so that's a lot of big issues, big important issues on the plate of the AOS board. And so I brought this list to the board chair meeting at the end of the month. And I asked the board chairs to come back and present this list to you at your local meeting and maybe talk about you know, the items that are important to you, or just plant in your minds to think about what's important to you. And so I guess that's the direction as your new AOS chair that I want you to give me is what are your priorities and where do you want to focus the AOS's time and energy? You know, some of it we have to address regardless of, you know, but there are other things that there's always things that are going to come along. They're going to disrupt. They're going to, you know, obviously COVID came around and disrupted a lot of the things we were working on. So I could take some of your feedback tonight, or my proposal is a few years ago, we had an all-day board workshop at Camp Beechcliff. We had breakfast, we had lunch later. We were there all day. And we kind of divided up into groups. We assigned each group, you know, topics to evaluate, to really delve deep into. And then the groups came back and reported back to the whole, discussed those results, and then kind of came up with some of our goals and plans. And now out of that meeting came, we really want an island-wide middle school. And so, you know, that's where that plan came from. Another thing was we want to take more of the AOS to take more of a central role, which plays to the restructuring of the AOS. And so these are themes we've already, you know, discussed in detail, but I'm trying to refocus us back. And so I guess maybe the question is, what's your plan for how we want to refocus? Are you guys, would you like another day-long workshop when we can all gather together in a live room? Or do you want to discuss these things here? I'm open to your suggestions. Ingrid.
So at our last meeting, we talked about the possibility of having a retreat or a board workshop that's focused on restructuring, because there are a lot of questions and I think that requires a hearty discussion. So I think that we need to, there are a number of topics that we need to do that on, but I think if the board wants to move forward with this conversation, which I and the rest of the people on the committee think is super important, given, that we're looking for a new superintendent who, has talked about the difficult job that is required to run the district the way it is set up now. I think that needs to be a workshop unto itself. So maybe it's a workshop soon to make some decisions about how we want to move forward with this structure conversation. And then maybe it's another board workshop in the fall to dive into some of these other topics, presuming that everybody is really busy during the summer months.
John, do you see, I see your hand up.
Yep. Okay, good. I guess for me, a workshop, I think we should do a workshop for sure. But because of my personality, I believe that our really first order of business should be to go back to the workshop we had several years ago, review what we put on our plate to investigate and to act upon, and to have closure on those few topics before we take on more topics. I mean, we put a lot of work into that workshop. We put a lot of work into all of those different topics that came out of that. Things got interrupted. And I believe that we owe it to everybody to have closure on some of those conversations first. But I'm in favor of a workshop.
Marie.
Before you start getting emails, I want to correct maybe one thing that you said. I don't know if you realize, you said that the island voted for a middle school.
To
But they
continue.
voted, yeah, just to correct before you start getting emails, the island voted for us to continue planning for a middle school. That's all I had to say.
John Bench.
I just want to say I agree with Ingrid that, all the things that we're looking at are really important, but in my opinion, the restructuring sort of is the umbrella that covers every one of those topics. And if we can't get that figured out, then, everything else is kind of moot at that point. There's no reason. Obviously we can do more than one thing. We can multitask, but I think if we're going to do a workshop or something like that, it should strictly be focused on that one topic so that we can figure out where we're going with that before we even start thinking about all the other things.
Carrie.
I want to echo what Todd said about looking back. I wasn't a part of the board at that time, but I can tell you with the trustees, when I started in on the high school trustees, we were given a packet that included a list of priorities that the trustees had established over the years as to, what the next projects would be. And some of that came because we had an architect who was telling us, kind of, this is where our biggest concerns are. But we've used that as a tool for the trustees to, kind of figure out which project to go with next. And something may come in that totally jumps the line, like our solar project did. So we give ourselves permission to let things jump the line, but having that list established and then growing it and looking at those priorities again on a fairly regular basis, I think it just gives a nice structure that this board could be well served by.
Brian.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that looking back at what you did the last time around would be helpful, especially for those of us that weren't part of that last planning process, so that we understand sort of the framework that had already been established. And I don't know if there are any materials that were generated out of that last workshop process that can be shared so that we can sort of get a concept of like what was talked about at the time and what people were thinking about, what's important to the board at that time, so that it at least gives us sort of a platform to work from as we move into what I think should be done, which is a further workshop.
And now, from what I'm hearing, is, we did that workshop, and out of that workshop came several subcommittees. Those subcommittees met and generated reports, the middle school subcommittee, transportation, food services, calendar. We could pull those reports that we generated from those subcommittees and reassemble them and distribute them to the board. And then what I'm wondering is if a workshop could consist of kind of maybe the first half going over, as Todd said, kind of where we are in that process and maybe what's important. But then the second half of that workshop could focus on the restructuring discussion and where we're going to go. You know, and because I don't know that the board has had a complete, there's a lot of questions out there that I think people have before they've even made a decision whether they support a restructure of the AOS. We haven't actually had that vote or discussion for every board member to weigh in. So does that sound, am I hearing what everybody's saying is that we kind of want to reevaluate the results of those previous goals and then delve into a deeper discussion on restructuring and then go from there? It might be a couple of board workshops. And knowing that I think with what we're doing, these workshops are probably going to happen late summer, in the summer, early fall, if we're going to make any headway, probably earlier. I mean, this board, you know, this is going to have to happen in the near future. Is everybody feeling comfortable with that? John?
Yes, I am. And what you described makes sense. The subtext to all those conversations was, wouldn't this be easier if we were a different organization? So I think we'll very quickly be able to roll right into that conversation.
Lily?
I would just like to say that I think sooner rather than later for the discussion about restructuring would be my vote, like yesterday.
Okay.
But because I do think that is really important for how we proceed with everything else.
I can work on I'll work with Mark to put some dates together and some locations of where we can all gather following all the proper protocols. And Marie?
I would just say, I think we really do have an obligation to loop back and look at the things that we've already invested a lot of time in. We haven't talked about the middle school like since a year ago or more than a year ago when the presentation to the community was canceled because of COVID. So there was an awful lot of there, and I know there's a number of other subcommittees that produced reports that we still haven't even chewed on because we were all interrupted over this past year. So getting this first meeting about the restructuring committee so we can have something to chew on is like really, really important. And then getting this other meeting where we can go back to chewing on the things we already did work on to help us set or reset priorities is really important. I don't see us being able to have one that's going to do both of those. I mean, we only had Ingrid and the committee only, I think, was talked for about 15 minutes or something. I still don't really even have a grasp on that, but it's important for us to have a grasp on that.
Ingrid?
I just think that we need to do, I don't think we can wait. I mean, if I'm fine with trying to do like a recap, you know, in the morning and then a afternoon of the restructure. I just think that this conversation is central to our superintendent search, because I think that if we can say that we as a school board have agreed that this new structure makes the most sense and that we are pushing through with our towns to work on this, that's going to be much more appealing to a potential candidate than, and I think the candidate deserves to know that we're either headed down that road or we're staying the way we are. And we recognize that we're going to have to hire more people to do the work that our current admin are doing, because it's their plates are too loaded. So, you know, I think if we can somehow do a short recap for part of the day and then dive into this. I mean, but I also don't want people to expect that our subcommittee does not have all of the answers. I mean, part of this workshop will be questions that you all raise that we will then go find the answers to, because we're not going to do more work than what we've already done until we know that there's support on the AOS board to move this subject forward. So.
Jessica, is your hand up?
Most of it's been covered, but it really does seem important to, I mean, I know there's the restructure thing reshapes all these things, but also to sort of close the loop on these other conversations, because yeah, it feels challenging to have all these pieces dangling in midair that, you know, then both in terms of our, you know, efficiency as a district and in terms of how we relate to our townspeople and so forth.
So I'm hearing you loud and clear that you want me to set this workshop as soon as possible. So I'm assuming we are talking about a Saturday, because I know my schedule is crazy because I'm open every day. I know a lot of you are as well, but I think for most people, the Saturday is the window we're looking at. Would you like a Saturday workshop? I'm assuming that nobody wants a day of the week workshop. Yes, I'm seeing nodding. So I will work on this. I'll work with Mark, see what we can come up with. I'm guessing probably not in May, but early June. But if we can do better, we'll try to do better. But with Memorial Day coming up and holidays, I'm thinking it's probably going to end up being pushed into that first weekend of June, maybe. I don't know. Mark, do you have any sense as to?
We'll make it happen, Christy. I'm confident. And actually the board had, you may remember, we held the workshop at Beach Clip, but we also did one at the BioLab. So it's been successful, and we'll make it happen.
Southwest has their town meeting on June 5th, which is a Saturday.
This is the 12th. And that's 2 Saturdays.
Okay.
Yes, so it would most likely have to be that third Saturday. Yeah.
Well, that would give us time to redistribute all of the working committee's reports, to make sure everybody has done their research with Ingrid's, the restructurings executive summary. And so everybody go do your homework. We'll try to get those documents out to you. Everybody do your reading, generate your questions, think about your next steps, and then we'll be ready for a really hearty board discussion.
And Christy,
That'll be my 50th birthday, so we can all eat cake together that weekend in June.
we have all that information archived, and we can send that out to new board members and all board members. So we'll get that out.
Marie.
Don't shoot in the messenger. I'm just going to throw this out. We've been in meetings. We've had, I don't even know what time we started. It's 9 o'clock.
I know.
We've had half a meeting. We've had a workshop tonight. I mean, I'm just like thinking about like all of us who have businesses like opening up, like giving that whole day away on Saturday. You know, I mean, is there a possibility of just doing like our typical Monday night board meeting, which is basically 5 hours now? I'm just saying, like, is there a way that it can, we all are here for this. I can't imagine being here on a Saturday, but it's just me with what I do. So anyway, just throwing that out there when you're thinking that we just had a workshop tonight.
Let me throw this out there. Is that I was contemplating proposing an AOS meeting on Monday, May 24th, which is 2 weeks from now. And then we would have our next AOS meeting on June 14th. And we can put some of these, we can have a discussion of the workshop, you know, the committee reports on that May 24th meeting. We can add the restructure. I mean, if you want to have those conversations, we probably could have them sooner rather than later. If we weren't doing an all-day Saturday meeting, we could schedule a May 24th meeting. I think that's an open Monday, right, Mark?
This is a trustee meeting, Christy, but we'll work around this. We'll make it happen. I agree, we can find a weeknight and then plan something more strategic. But I'll work with you to make this happen.
Would that be most of your preference to try to schedule a couple more weeknight meetings that could be shorter than an all-day Saturday? I'm seeing thumbs up by Todd, I'm seeing thumbs up by Rob. All the people who have the tourist businesses are giving me the thumbs up. I'm trying not to be biased, but I'm giving the thumbs up as well. But maybe we can do a compromise. We'll work it out. But Mark and I will get together and work on it. And hopefully maybe we can get it back to your board chairs as well. And we'll get some doodle polls or something together.
And we still have cake.
I would still have cake.
Absolutely. We'll make sure you have cake and you'll get to eat it too.
So I think we kind of cover restructuring, that we're going to postpone that discussion, right? So I can move on. Okay, yes. Action items, appointment of the Assistant Director of Special Services.
I know the hour grows late, Christy, but I'm going to take a couple minutes because I'm really proud of this nomination, and I think the board will be too. And this is a shout out for not only this individual, but everybody that works here, everybody that's worked hard all their life. I am really, really pleased to nominate Kathy Kazarin for this position. And let me just tell you a couple of things about Kathy. We talked about, investment and stakeholders. Kathy has worked in this district. I say district, I'm not going to go through her entire resume, but she started in '96 as an ed tech at Connors Emerson School. From there, Kathy went to Frenchboro as a K-8 teacher. It's a one-room schoolhouse, if you've never been to Frenchboro, 8 miles offshore. And Kathy served there as a teacher, reading, writing, math, social studies, science, art, physical education, you name it, for 2 years on Frenchboro. And then Kathy returned back to Connors Emerson as an ed tech. So again, she started as an ed tech at the high school, went to Frenchboro as a teacher, came to Connors Emerson as an ed tech. And then in 2000, Kathy joined the staff as a special education teacher at Mount Desert Island High School. Since 2007, Kathy's been, I guess you could say, a quasi-administrator, because she's led the day-to-day, the leadership activities of overseeing day-to-day operations and special services. She's participated in hiring and training. She's worked to ensure kids are getting the special education services that they need and deserve. She's created schedules and assignments. She's been an IEP coordinator. Kathy, if you haven't met Kathy, she's a pleasure to be around. She's calm. She's a great communicator. She's strong knowledge of special education. She's organized. She's equitable. She's an incredible work ethic. And I'll close by saying this is a statement I took out of her her application letter. Students are the top priority, but we can all do better work when we have sound systems and good support for special education teachers and ed techs. It's my privilege to nominate Kathy for this position. I think she'll do an amazing job. And again, what a testament to growing from within. Wonderful person. Please take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to agree. I love when we can promote from within, and we have such strong teachers and staff in this district, and to be able to bring people up who have done amazing work for us. It's just making me proud. Carrie.
Can you just very quickly tell us what this position does?
Yes. Oh, Carrie, thank you. This is the Assistant Director of Special Services for our entire district. And I think most folks know we have an outstanding staff of special educators. Our district is overseen for special education services by Melissa Beckwith. And this position really is the support for that position. It's the Assistant Director, and this person would oversee meetings that the director can't be at. There's coordination with IEPs that require district level presence. So in a district this size, in the scope of the services we have, It's not uncommon to have an assistant, and frankly, our staffing is, with what we have and the work that Melissa does and her staff, you know, we could certainly use more help, but it really is analogous to the position. If you think of Dr. Meltzer, if you think of Julie working in my office, it's really the assistant to the superintendent. This is the assistant to the director, Carrie. Certainly provide job description as well. Any questions? And I don't know if Melissa's here, probably not. It's been a long day, but if she wants to add anything, please do.
Melissa's here.
Yeah, I don't think I need to add any more. I think you've said it, Mark.
And we sure as heck, we've got amazing people, and we sure as heck want to keep Melissa Beckwith. She's a gem, and anything we can do to support her, I'm all in.
And so if there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
So
moved.
Second. Three.
I missed both of those. Who moved first?
I don't know. This is Jessica. I moved.
Jessica?
I don't know if that's first.
Second by Marie. And then before we vote, Todd, Susan McCready had to leave the meeting at 9. She was your voting member. Do you want to ask Brian or James to step in and vote? I don't know how that works.
Yes, Brian. Just because you're first on the screen. Thanks, Brian.
And I guess we can, does it matter that we can note that to Selena later?
It's okay. What Todd just did, it'll be fine. If Brian votes, it'll be noted in the minutes.
We'll still have three. We'll still have only 3 votes. So.
Okay, so all in favor of the nomination of Kathy Kazarin, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Or I don't know. I think I've got everybody. Jessica, are you voting yes?
Yes.
And then are there anyone opposed? No, that's a unanimous vote. Congratulations, Kathy. Welcome to your new position. And next week, Mark, are we going to establish the 2020 salary and benefits for administrators? And
Yes. I would like to make a recommendation. This is the time of the year for planning purposes, and I see Nancy still here, but really important that the business office and I think our employees would like to know going into next year where we're at. Based upon our tentative agreement with the Bar Harbor support staff, I would like to recommend that we establish the fiscal year 22 salary and benefits for administrators and support staff at 3.5%. There's an aggregate amount, and that we maintain current health benefits and maintain existing language in our working agreements and contracts. Before anybody asks, I did some research with Selena and with Nancy, and historically, and this predates me, when the board has chosen, if they should choose to support this recommendation, it has typically been followed by all of our member schools and communities. But that's been the past practice. And Nancy, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that is my recommendation.
Are there any questions by the board? Would anyone like to, John?
Do we have to act on this tonight?
We don't. We can postpone this till the next meeting.
It just seems like might be a prudent thing to do.
If you're all in favor, we couldn't, I think we've discussed having the next meeting on May 24th. We could entertain this for an action item at that meeting. Or even the June 14th.
What exactly would be the motion, Mark?
Yes, Christy, may I answer Todd's question?
Please.
So the recommendation, Todd, is to establish fiscal year 22 salary and benefits for administrators and support staff. The Bar Harbor support staff is the only support staff in the AOS that is represented by an association. So each year, the board typically sets those parameters for both administrators and support staff. And the only other piece I was going to ask is for Nancy to weigh in, because there's a timing issue with contracts and other pieces. So I would just defer to Nancy. Again, whatever the board decides is what we will follow, but I just wanted Nancy to weigh in, just advocating for her and her office.
Yeah, usually we want to try to get all the work agreements, and obviously Selena would like to get the contracts out for the administrators before the end of the school year. So if you, it would be, if you don't do it tonight, then it would, be best if we did it at 24th meeting if possible. It just makes a timing problem because we have to go through and do all of them and then get them out prior to the end of school.
So Ingrid has a question. I mean, I'm
Go ahead,
about to make a
Todd.
motion. I'm about to make a motion, but so I'm sorry.
Ingrid.
I'm assuming that, John, you're thinking that to wait because of our next meeting with the teachers, but we don't even have a set meeting with the teachers if we think we're not having it on Friday. So I think that we don't know where we're going to end up with the teachers. So I don't think that should preclude us from getting this business done.
Okay. So now I forgot exactly what the motion needs to read.
Todd,
I'm not even sure what motion you're making, Todd.
do you want to know what my recommendation was, Todd?
Yes.
My recommendation was as follows: to establish fiscal year 22 salary and benefits for administrators and support staff. And that recommendation is the amount being 3.5% aggregate, and maintain existing benefits to include health insurance, and maintain all existing language.
So I move to accept Mark's recommendation for the fiscal year 2022 salary and benefits for administrators and some support staff.
Second, Carrie.
Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor, can you raise your hand? Let me just go through.
Yay. It's dark in my room, but I'm raising my hand.
Okay. And all those opposed? That motion passes unanimously by the board.
Thank you. Appreciate your support. Christy, do you want to go into the next item?
Yes, please.
So without belaboring the point, I know the hour grows late here. It's 9:10. There are no recommendations for any changes other than what the board received last meeting. This, in short, I know we had a lot of discussion and dialogue, and that was important. That's healthy, but what we really tried to do at the end is incorporate that feedback from parents, from staff, and bring forward a recommendation. Again, I want to clearly say that I think it's very important that we make sure we think of what's best for our students first and foremost, always. But it's also important for us to walk our talk. And if we're going to continue to support a standards-based system, which we have, and that's the right thing to do, in my opinion, we need to continue to honor our teachers with the time to do that work. And the board has done that this past year in a very difficult year. I believe this recommendation will allow us to continue to vet, build capacity in the framework, then the supports that we need to support families who may have need, as well as working with our partners. And so this, in by no way, shape, or form is the be all end all. But we believe at this time, it's our best recommendation to put our best foot forward, to gather that feedback, and to continue to work with folks to figure out what is the best way for us to balance both ends of the spectrum, our students' needs, and also the best vehicle to provide support and professional development for our staff, and making sure that we don't lose the support of our communities. So happy to take any questions, and I see that Julie's here as well if there's any questions specific to teaching and learning. And this would be recommendation for final reading to set the calendar for next year for our member schools, just to be clear.
Carrie,
Are we addressing the start time for the high school in this calendar, or is that a separate item?
No, start times are not part of the calendar. I'm sorry, Christy, may I answer?
no, please answer.
Start times are not, Carrie, they're set administratively, and I think if there are any questions on that, we should work directly, with Matt and his staff through my office and with the board. We certainly would not want to do anything that wasn't widely supported by our communities and by our boards. But the short answer is that calendars historically do not deal with start and end times.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say that I think a lot of great work went into the conversations in the calendar, and that I think this is a really perfect compromise. So I'm in support of it.
If there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve the calendar as presented. You need it.
Second.
Got a second from a baby.
That was Jessica. And Saoirse, she's seconding.
Is there any other discussion on the calendar? I want to second what Carrie said. There was a lot of discussion and public comment, and during meetings, outside of meetings, there were phone calls and emails, and a lot of work by the A team and all their hours that they put into coming up with this. And I know it's a compromise. I know not everybody is in 100% in love with everything about this calendar, but that's what makes it work, is that we were all willing to come together and compromise. And so I appreciate everybody's hard work. So everyone in favor, please raise your hand
Aye.
or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Jessica. And then anyone opposed? No. So thank you, everyone. That calendar passes unanimously.
Thank you for your support.
Is there any other business?
I have no recommendations at this time, Christy.
And for a future agenda, obviously, we are going to be talking about restructuring. We're going to be reviewing the goals or the subcommittee reports. We're going to be revisiting or discussing the superintendent search. And we made the list very long tonight. And I think we're looking, I'll be with you, Julie, also to move that meeting date up, maybe to the week of May 24th, if possible. Julie.
The Anti-Racism Task Force is planning to present. They think they're presenting on the
14th?
original day, the 14th. Yeah, is that going to work for you? And
yep.
They also asked me to ask you how long you wanted them to have so that they could plan appropriately.
Julie, I'll work with Christy and you on that. We can get the answers to them. I know they have a lot of important work to do, but I'll work with Christy on the agenda. And as far as the timing, I'll also work with Christy to get something back to you here before in the next couple of days.
And Christy, I will also have, we've been doing some demographic studies so that we can also present the board with information about any, just checking on to see if there are discrepancies in different programming areas, et cetera, by race, socioeconomic status, et cetera. So I think it'll be interesting for the board to hear and see what is currently happening in the district.
And can we put that onto that June 14th meeting as well and save the 24th for these other items that we can,
Sure, yeah. Thank you.
anybody else? Really?
I just want to highlight again the middle
Great.
school. Oh, sorry. I don't know. I thought you said Marie. I'm also completely delirious and sorry, tired like everybody else. Sorry, whoever I cut off. I just want to again highlight the middle school. Like, I know that's going to be a part of the conversation and that's going to be lumped in the priorities, but it is something that was the last thing we finished and the last thing we stopped talking about during the pandemic. And it's very, I haven't been harping on it over the past year because we've had other things to work on, but the time is, and I would like to, you're acknowledging that I haven't harped on it, so good. And then part two, I don't really know what this falls under, but I'm happy that I echo the sentiments about the calendar and the work that was done on that and the discussions, because I think they were challenging is a euphemism, but it produced a positive result with the exception of we have to figure out how we are going to deal with our obligation for the discrepancy in the planning time between the high school teachers and the elementary school teachers. I think we need to put the direction forth. Are we going to deal with that by contract? Are we going to deal with that by something else? I think that's a decision that we need to make, but we can't run, and I'm not saying we would, but we can't sort of like dash away from that, that decision-making process because we don't know what to do with it. And I don't think it's fair just to leave it on the backs of the elementary school administrators either. So however you want to work that up, I think it's something that we need to discuss in the very near future.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Marie, and I added it to the list, and I know we had discussed, a subcommittee or other ways to begin approaching that, and Mark and I have been talking about that, and so I will definitely put it on the agenda to circle back at the next meeting. All right. So, like I said, we'll definitely be having a meeting on Monday, June 14th. We'll try to work on an intermediary meeting if we can make that work out. And so just keep your eyes on your email and we'll hopefully get something to you as soon as possible. And then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
That sounds so pained. All right. And do we vote or do we just move? Oh, are you raising your hand? Or are you voting? All right. Everybody raise your hand. I'm sure there's no discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for hanging.
Bye. Thanks, Kirsty.